right, here we are again. It's, I don't know, 2 years after we did a little run through of looking back at the writing and recording and mixing process of our debut album, The Grand Enigma. And here we are again. We've aged well and also wrote a new album that we'd like to talk a bit about.
Yes, it's been quite a ride, I think. It's been
Once
a lot
again,
of work. I mean, we actually started basically right away after the first one was released, right?
yeah,
So
definitely.
it was basically 2 years of almost constant work with
Yes.
some ups and downs in intensity. But overall, it was 2 years of work. And again, a lot of back and forth.
Oh yeah, we didn't get rid of that.
Maybe it became even worse. I don't know. The more we dug into the topic, the more intense all the back and forth got, which
Yeah.
is probably a good thing.
Yeah. Probably with the next album we'll be getting better.
No, no. Actually, I thought about that on the way here, and I don't think it will. It will maybe just change. The focus will be even more on details instead of general topics on how to record a record basically in your office, which is what, well, you've been doing because it literally is in your office. And I think we've tackled quite a few topics when it comes to these basics. So we will definitely start at a different point and can go deeper into detail. Yeah, let's maybe talk about the approach. What has changed? What have we learned from record number one, which was highly improvised, I would say. When I look back and when I listen to it, there are quite a few things that we would have done differently by now, I think. And yeah, maybe you can tell me a bit about your approach, how it has changed and maybe has gotten better.
It hopefully has gotten better, but yeah, it's hard to pick specific details because I guess we had to make progress on all fronts, starting with the songwriting, with the choice of instruments, the instrument setups, the recording environment, the way of getting a more usable DI signal, the choice of synth patches, literally everything.
Let's maybe start with songwriting because again, that's something we hardly ever talk about whilst we're in the middle of making the whole thing because we are so focused on all the sounds and the production and mix and everything. But the songwriting comes first. When you approach me with your first tracks and wave files, the songwriting has been done. Um, so that's a part I'm not included in. And
Hmm.
did you, when you started writing for record two, listen to record one and make maybe a mental list or an actual list about the things that you want to approach differently?
Um, Probably a mentalist, yes. That's a funny thing because I started writing the album or wrote most of it while we were still mixing the first album. So it was hard to uh, get lessons that we learned there into the new stuff. And I just knew pretty soon that I wanted the album to go in a quite opposite direction because with the first one it just turned out during the writing process that this would be a concept album with all the songs interweaved and motives being linked and harmonic progressions being the same in different songs. And this time I remember that I decided pretty soon to screw all of that and go for completely closed individual environments for every song and tell encapsulated stories with each track. But also on the other hand, I pretty soon came up with the idea of like having an overlying arch of connecting these individual songs not by music means, but by the narratives that are going on. And there's like a red thread going through the album, which is linked with the title Tiny Miracles. And yeah, maybe I can get a bit into detail about that later on.
Yeah, that would actually be quite interesting because I think on the musical side of things, it really served the second record. It it felt less like you've been overthinking things to make songs connect and pick up motives that you've used before and all that stuff. It seems a bit fresher to me, even though I've listened to it for about 5 million times now. I still enjoy the songs, and that's a little less the case with record one. But how do you feel about record one now, listening back to it?
I have to admit I didn't listen to it for quite some time because it was so overheard, and there's also some details in it that keep bugging me, so I put it aside for quite some time, but I came back to it, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I listened to it again from start to finish, and I still really enjoy it. I like the songwriting. I'm still happy with how everything came out. I mean, of course, there are lots of flaws, which mainly result in the basics we had to work with. So like the recorded signals and the way the bass sounded. Oh, the dreaded bass.
Which bass? There basically, pun intended, there basically is none.
Yes.
That's probably looking back my biggest issue with the record. It sounds quite tinny and thin because we didn't have the fundamentals it needs on a sonic level to make it really punch and hit hard.
Yes, but nonetheless, I think you made quite the best out of it, and I still really enjoy listening to it. So, yeah, no regrets so far.
No, me neither. Absolutely not. I think it was absolutely necessary to make a record like this to learn, basically, just to learn. Because for me, it's also a completely new approach to produce a record completely in the box, basically. And
Mhm.
there was no quote unquote real recording involved, like putting a mic in front of an amp or anything, except for the vocals, of course, and working with completely programmed drums for an entire record. I've never done that before, and it comes with so many new challenges. Um, so I think we both had to learn a ton about production, especially about how would you call it? Very modern production. It's not the classic approach. It's what's been done more and more and more now because it's so easily accessible. Um, yeah, but it's a very different mindset, and I still have to get adjusted to it, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, me too. I think we made a huge step in the right direction with the second record, but I also feel like I don't know. Maybe you will always feel like that, but we are not there yet.
No, we're not. But with the last record, I never really thought, okay, it's done now. I'm super happy. And with this record, I do. I think we made the best out of the material we had. Um, but I also have a list for number three about things that we can still improve on. That might probably never stop, but I think it's this. We are with the first record we were at 50%. Now we might be at 80, and now we have to tackle the last 20 to make it like really high standard.
Yes, and also when I recall the mixing process, I mean, the mixing the first album took us like 1.5 years or something, and there were so many phases where just nothing happened because real life took its toll, and you had to work, I didn't have time, and we mixed the way of exchanging feedback was much less developed than what we did with the second record. And I think with the second record, the density was much higher of ping-ponging our ideas, and we also took more time in the end until we were both really satisfied. I mean, in the first mixing process, I recall I wasn't satisfied with certain things, but you wanted to get things done and put the lid on everything, and that resulted in some flaws which might have been avoidable. And with the second one, we really got into, I feel like, all the details, and we kept finding new things that we adjusted, and I think that really paid off in the end.
It did, yeah. I mean, I think I have a quite well-developed inner sensor for the moment when further tweaking doesn't make things really better. And while we did the first record, I came to that point a bit earlier than with the second one, because there were already so many flaws while that happened while recording and producing, and there is just so much you can do. And after a certain point, it will only get worse. You will create new problems if you try to fix old ones. And with this record, it was way easier to get it to a good level and tweak from there on without ruining it, basically.
Yes, I think we're maybe talking about different aspects. For example, on the first album, there were really some balancing issues that we didn't solve in the end. There were like two layers of strings with a lead melody and a backing melody, and they were turned upside down in the final result, and you hear the backing melody in front and almost nothing of the lead melody.
I can't even remember.
Yeah, it's just details, and I'm pretty sure nobody will be able to pick these out. But I know what I wrote, and I know what I wanted it to sonically end up with. And yeah, there are some details which just slipped, and I think we got to live with that.
That's probably also a big part of the process and the learning curve that we had, because the songwriting with the second record was in a way that it was way easier for me to decide by myself how the balance should be. It was less cluttered things. And I think there are still parts where I could never ever figure out on my own how the balance is supposed to be, while in the second record it became much more obvious already. And that's a topic we talked about quite a lot, about how to place sounds in a song, how to leave space in certain parts. And I think we are at a much better level now than we were with record one, but I think we can also still improve on it.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing that's quite on the top of my list for album number 3. Even making, how can I say, smarter decisions in choosing sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and especially earlier, I think we might have pushed, if we want to talk about big mistakes on number 2, we thought we could start the mix way too early. Production wasn't done at all. And we tried, and we basically failed and had to get back to the drawing board. I mean, I restarted the mix entirely from scratch. And in the meantime, we fixed quite a few things.
Yeah, I think that's basically my fault, because I gave you green light on what, I don't know, guitar sound decisions or whatever, but I'm still lacking the experience to imagine how something might sound in the final mix. And so we always hit that wall during the first mixing attempts
Yeah.
of realizing, the guitar has too much distortion or too little distortion or too low in the mids or whatever. And yeah, that was what threw us back and forth.
Yeah, it did. But it's I don't see it as a fault. I see it as maybe lack of experience. For you, it's lack of experience when it comes to creating sounds, and you. But it still baffles me a bit that you are a guitar player for like 150 years and you don't have your go-to sound. That's super weird because you're such a good guitar player, and usually that comes along with having some clear favorites that you can use as a starting point.
Yeah, I know what I like in a way, but I never came to the point where I said I want to set with this sound. Maybe I haven't discovered my favorite amp yet. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. But I think that's a big task for number 3 to work on that before we even start to really produce anything. It would make for such a great starting point if we would have that settled. Because I mean, in this mix, I still have the amp sims running, which is something that you try to avoid at all costs usually. I was so prepared for changes to the guitar sound while mixing that I left it like this to make my life a bit easier. And I really want to change it because it distracts you from the actual mixing process. I don't want to think about sounds anymore. I want to think about balance and about placement and about making everything work together, which would also speed up the mixing process massively, because right now it was still a bit of producing and mixing intertwined, which is fine. I mean, there is no right or wrong, but I always try to aim for the easiest possible way in an endeavor which by definition is never easy. But let's try to make it as easy as possible. And that
Yes.
would certainly help.
I mean, we're already at it. And
Yeah.
yes, I think part of it is my indecisiveness that I can find something to appreciate in many different sounds. And for that reason, can translate it into deciding to go for one clear option.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's, as I mentioned before, the lack of imagination for how is a basic amp sound translating in a mix.
Yeah. But maybe that's the approach we have to talk about more, and because it's if you have an amp sound that you like, it's way easier to go with that amp sound. Of course, tweak the obvious things to have enough low end and maybe not too much high end to not make it super harsh while recording, and you already know you have to fix it later. And then start to build all the other sounds around it. So they can make basically a handshake and really fit well. But right now we're maybe still looking too much at the individual sound instead of the big picture, even though we already did it way better than on record 2. And now we were talking about your flaws, but for me it's also quite challenging because this is not the style of music I grew up with. So I'm not as used to the aesthetics as you are. And I had to learn a lot. The recording approach was different. The production approach was different. And I didn't have any references in my head, basically. So I had to make a deep dive, basically, and try to understand the genre, and also took a lot of time to observe other producers from that genre, to learn their techniques, and because it's a very technical approach, not so much about gut feeling as with other styles of rock music, what it ultimately is. But if you have like 180 or 200 tracks in one song, it comes with a lot of challenges, and that's a huge learning curve for me, but one that I also enjoy a lot. It makes me way more flexible and also knowledgeable about different approaches. It's a very good thing.
Yeah, and that's something that I really like about where we ended up, because you clearly, with the second album, oriented on how does contemporary prog metal sound. But on the other hand, I can always hear that your influences are lying somewhere else, and that also translates into your sound and makes it sound less standard and very unique.
I like that you say that, because it's really a very conscious approach from my side. For example, I really have a huge problem with the kick drum sound in most metal productions. It sounds so fake and so clicky, and I mean, I've listened to real kick drums a billion times in my life, and I have this sonic image burned into my ears and my brain, and I just can't make the connection between this organic sound and what I hear on some of these records. So I tried to go for an approach that's somewhere in the middle, leaves it a bit more organic, but still has some punch and clarity. And I hope I found a okay-ish middle ground there.
Well, I can say I really enjoy your drum sound, and I don't think it's completely different from what's standard in, I don't know, a Bogren production with Caligula's Horse or whoever. Um, but it's, as you said, it's a nice middle ground.
It's
It's
good.
not too different, but it's different enough to sound refreshing.
Yeah, and I think also your songwriting is pretty different to most of the things I've listened to. Um, it's very interesting because I sometimes have a hard time to enjoy some of these records because they sound a bit, I don't know, maybe a bit either too generic at times, uh, or they are a bit too much focused on show off. Look how good I can play my instrument. And you somehow you manage to find the middle ground between showing some skill and doing complex stuff, but it also always touches me. Each of these songs means something emotionally, and I find that very beautiful. That makes it so cool to work on it, because it's not standard.
That's a great compliment. I'll go and cry a little bit.
Later,
Be
after the
back
call.
soon. Okay, I keep that for later. No,
Yeah.
another aspect that I find very unique in your sound design is the role of the bass guitar. I mean, I listen to a lot of prog metal, and I can't think of any band that has such an aggressive upfront role for the bass. Maybe you
Yeah,
can tell me a bit about where that comes from and why you chose to go that direction.
I just love it. I love the approach of not relying too much on the guitars for heaviness, but rather take it from the bass, because the bass really has it has a lot of impact, and I like it if that blends well with the guitars. And yeah, I usually tend to have the guitars maybe a bit thinner than others would do, and get the aggression from the bass, because it also sits in the center. It blends with the kick drum, and it punches you right in the face. And that's what I like. I always liked gnarly basses in basically every style of music that I listen to, even in some kind of what you would call maybe softer pop music. not Taylor Swift, of course, but there are many indie pop artists that write great songs, and a lot of the stuff that I have in my library has very distinct bass sounds.
Yeah, I have to admit it was something that I really had to get used to because at first, I mean, I'm coming from a classical prog background with bands like Dream Theater, where there's always the criticism on many albums of theirs that you almost can't hear the bass at all. It's like the And Justice for All phenomenon going like a red thread through the whole genre. And at first, when I listened to your first mixing attempts, I thought, what the heck, what's going on there? But I actually love it now.
That's great to hear, because I think the bass playing is also so great. There are so many cool bass lines in there, and it would be a shame to just bury them and not have them audible. So it seemed almost like an obvious choice to make the bass play a more important role than you would maybe do in a classic prog production.